Welcome to this week in the world of wrestling.
Welcome to TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John, that's my cohort and commentary Ashton, and this is our Lucha Underground review. And what an incredible episode of Lucha Underground, as if we expected anything less from our favorite temple. I mean, we got so much storyline progression on this episode. I mean, partner, I know you said, and I believe you even said it in our live reactions, which you can go check out on the channel, that this was a very story-driven episode. So we had story progression, we had championship matches, we had debuts. This episode hit us with everything but the kitchen sink, and I loved every second of it. Partner, what'd you think of it?
I'm sure if we would go back and rewatch the episode, we would find a kitchen sink somewhere.
Probably. Knowing this temple, it packs everything.
Absolutely. But yeah, I agree. This was a really, really good episode. The last two episodes have been phenomenal, really hard to live up to. And even though I won't say that this episode was better than either one of them, it was by far not a letdown.
Exactly. I mean, for me personally, it's really hard to top. I'd say damn near impossible to top the epicness of Aztec Warfare 2, especially after the fact that it was only just last week. So it's still got a bit of that recency going on for it.
Yeah.
But you know what? This show still does everything far and above anything that WWE produces these days. So that goes without saying. Let's just get right into our first segment. Heat of the night.
I thought we agreed to skip this.
Yeah, that's true. We did agree to skip it because I'm still getting used to it. But you're right. There's just no point because I'm not packing anything. I know you're not packing anything. So let's just go right into our Lucha Underground review. Now, we got a recap of Aztec Warfare and just all the events that are going to be handled on tonight's episode. After that recap, we go to Robert Rodriguez's band. You know, we got those live musical performances back at the temple. Great to see. And then we go to Dario Cueto, and he immediately starts laying down the law, says this is my temple, you know, talks about Matanza's dominance, but then he starts making some announcements. The biggest one that he makes, a new trios tournament is going to start next week.
Oh, did he say next week? For some reason, I thought it was 2 weeks from now.
No, next week it starts.
Wow. I mean, we don't even, it seems like there really aren't that many trios in the temple right now. There are a lot of tag teams, but it doesn't seem like a lot of trios are going on.
And that's what makes me wonder if the tag teams that we kind of know about, I mean, what comes to mind, like Mundo and Taya, Rey Mysterio and El Dragon Azteca Jr., if they're going to buddy up with a third person, or what alliances they can make or create.
Well, just to kind of add on to that, I mean, Jack Evans and PJ Black, Drago and Aerostar, let's not forget them, Cisco and Cortez.
Certainly. You know, what third person can they find all of those teams if they want to find them? You know, a lot of questions. And again, Trios champions on full display tonight. They did have a title defense. We'll get into that just a little bit later.
And I mean, even building off of that, I know you kind of mentioned, you know, kind of trying to move on. But before we do, Mac and Sexy Star, Marty and his sister. Like, how many of these tag teams are going to be either A, fusing with leaving someone out, or B, just adding a third?
Yeah, that is very true. That's an excellent point. So a lot of intrigue going into the trios tournament starting next week, and this is going to be quite different because I'm assuming, I'm assuming the winner gets a title shot, and that the titles aren't going to be defended within the confines of this tournament. So we'll see who the new number one contenders will be. But then Cueto goes on to try and make a new announcement about the number one contender for his brother's world title. But before he could even finish, Pentagon comes out. So he goes from one authority figure in Catrina that he was starting beef with to just picking it up with Cueto and stirring the pot with him because he says, hey, the only reason Matanza won Aztec Warfare was because I wasn't involved. And he really did set the table for presumably Matanza's biggest threat to be out of the matchup because he laid out Mil Muertes and then Rey Mysterio and company picked up the scraps. So Pentagon Jr. more or less taking credit for Matanza's dominance. I don't know if I'd go that far, but Pentagon does make a legitimate point. He was not in Aztec Warfare.
Yeah.
Cueto, though, says, don't kid yourself. Maybe you weren't in Aztec Warfare because you're not championship material. And then Pentagon lets him know, like, hey, I want Matanza, I want a shot at the world title. Cueto doesn't seem to give in, but like all things in the temple, everybody's natural tongue is force and violence. And Pentagon speaks the language quite fluently as he gets Cueto in a compromising position, more or less ready to break his arm unless Cueto complies, and he eventually does, so we know that Pentagon is going to face Matanza tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely incredible just how over Pentagon is. I mean, truly the defining anti-hero from where I sit in the temple.
Oh, for sure. There's no even question to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And he got his way. He gets Matanza one-on-one world title shot tonight. So anything you want to say about this opening segment?
Not necessarily about the opening segment, but there's a segment later on that I want us to talk, and yeah, it's bringing some stuff to light.
All right, man. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but for now, let's move on. What came after this?
Up next was our first match of the night. Taya and Johnny Mundo taking on the Crew, Cortez Castro and Mr. Cisco. And yeah, I mean, this was a solid match, but then it really didn't take very long, maybe like 5 minutes, I would say, and a certain machine showed up.
Yes, Cage once again sticking his nose in Mundo's business. And unfortunately, this cost them yet another matchup because Mundo takes to higher ground, a tactical retreat, I might add, but it does leave Taya by herself against the Crew. They hit their double team finisher on her, and they get the win and, the pin. So that's how that all ended, and Cage again playing these mind games with Mundo and Taya. You have to figure it's going to come to a head somehow. Maybe some kind of a street fight, a Boyle Heights brawl maybe. So I don't know if that's what they're going to do, but you have to know that some payoff is coming between Cage and Mundo. A fine matchup even before the interference. Good heel work from Mundo, always tagging out when things got rough. Taya was shooting him some looks. You said something interesting when we were doing live reactions. You said you wouldn't be surprised if Taya ended this season as a Technico. And if you look at how Taya's booked, really hanging with, not just men or women, but like really big guys like Cage and showing her toughness. I mean, she got suplexed through a table by Cage and still continued to fight.
And that's my thing too. Like, even if they wouldn't have been doing these little teases with Mundo tagging her and her giving him this look and stuff, the fact that she's really proving just how tough she is, being able to kind of, take Cage's offense and stuff like that alone is enough to really kind of endear her to the fans.
Absolutely. Well, that's what the temple responds to, right? They love somebody that's tough. They love somebody that's violent. And I don't really know if Taya's demonstrated a lot of the latter, but she's demonstrated the former in spades, just in full. One of the toughest people in the temple. And I wouldn't even be surprised if maybe not necessarily this season, but next season, season 3, and I keep hearing that the tapings are white hot, we do get a match at one point, Taya versus Johnny Mundo. Maybe that'll be a bit of a slower build, but I mean, I don't think this union's going to last for forever, given just how Mundo's really treating Taya, and again, always taking a higher ground, always letting her take the heat. But yeah, good matchup, furthers the story between Cage and Mundo. I'm hoping Mundo gets on the winning end, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The Crew does get a victory, though, and really no progression as far as Cortez, Mr. Cisco, and Chavo was nowhere to be seen, because they left him high and dry, so I didn't know if he was going to come out and give him a tongue wagging or whatever, like, how dare you abandon me and start beef with them. No, they were actually able to pick up a win, so maybe the story now is going to be that Cortez Castro and Mr. Cisco, they're more dominant than ever now without Chavo. Maybe they'll find a third person to run with, but they'll actually be in charge for the Trios tournament next week.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, they actually got a win. When's the last time you've seen the Crew win anything? And they didn't have to answer to anybody but themselves tonight. I find that very interesting. Yeah. Granted, Cage did get involved, but a win is a win.
Well, I mean, maybe what if Cage ends up being their third?
That could be very interesting.
I mean, I'm not saying that I think it's going to happen for sure because, the way that they've been portraying Cage this season, he's definitely more technico than Rudo, but there's always the possibility that he joins up with them just for the possibility that he might get his hands on Mundo and Taya.
I completely agree with you. Hey, anything can happen in the temple, so Cage aligning with the crew solely for the interest of getting his hands on Johnny Mundo is entirely plausible to me. So, yeah, with that said, unless you've got anything you want to say about this match, we can move on.
All right, let's move on. Up next, we had Marty the Moth Martinez sitting in a chair in his house, in his home, talking about how the Moth tribe used to basically rule over all of the other Aztec tribes, talking about how they were able to acquire riches. And we got to see a montage of images showing Marty basically living the baller life. And then he talked about how if anyone ever threatened to try and take the tribe's gold, the secret weapon that destroyed those people in their tribe was the Mariposa. And the mask itself has been passed down through the generations, but the deadliest Mariposa of them all is the one that wears the mask now, and that's his sister.
And then you see his sister just wiping out these guys, these finely dressed luchadors, because they're all wearing masks, laying them all to waste, including last a guy that looked particularly big, cutting him down to size.
Yep.
And what's even more disturbing is that we find that Marty has been reading this whole time from a book with blank pages.
Yeah.
So this is just his own personal recollection of the tribe that he claims has their blood swimming in his veins. And I like that because it seems perfectly consistent with the Marty character. One, that he's completely insane. And two, of course you're going to have a bias or a very strong subjective opinion when you come from a certain group or a collective of people. So, of course, Marty's going to bloat up the legacy of his tribe and just be like, oh, they ruled over everybody else. I mean, something that I was immediately skeptical of, but I have no problem buying that the Mariposa was kind of the enforcer of, guarding the wealth. That is easily believable to me, because the latest Mariposa, his sister, totally laid waste to those guys, and it was awesome to see.
Yeah, and I also think it's really... One of my favorite moments of this little vignette was when Marty was like, the Moth tribe has always been about two things: Aztec pride, and then I think the other thing that he said was acquiring wealth or something like that. But just that delivery was so good. I loved it, man. He's amazing.
He is, dude. Such a great performer. I'm telling you, Marty is a guy whose stock I think is just going to continue to climb, and with somebody as good as Mariposa, who, again, formerly cheerleader Melissa, and now she's got this established identity here, sky's the limit for both of them. And I do say both of them, because as incredible as Mariposa is, I never want us to lose sight of how dedicated Marty is to this role, and just his perfect portrayal of it all the way through. Guy's incredible.
He is so good, dude. He is quickly becoming one of my favorites in Lucha Underground, and I think if you look on my channel, I'm pretty sure he's actually already in my Fave 5, so what does that tell you?
I mean, that doesn't surprise me, because I know when he initially debuted by stalking the outside of the temple and he had that little confrontation with Cueto, you were more excited than anybody because you registered who he was, that he came from Toughen Up and went through all those channels. And now, I mean, talking about taking the ball and running with it, guys scoring fucking touchdowns left and right. Unbelievable. So, much respect to both of them. Quickly becoming, I think, one of the premier acts in the temple, and just week to week their storylines seem quite engaging, and what they're doing with Sexy Star, just awesome stuff. I love it. I can't wait to see more.
Yeah, dude, this was amazing. We'll see more of them, I don't think up next, but very soon. So up next, though, we had a segment in Cueto's office, but before we got into the office, we see Black Lotus keeping guard outside of Cueto's office. Just, playing that bouncer role, making sure nobody gets in. But the problem is you can't really bounce somebody that doesn't need to use doors.
Exactly, because Catrina, having the ability to teleport, is able to easily evade Black Lotus, and is just immediately sitting in a chair across from Cueto, staring at him, and they hash out their business, because believe me, there is a lot to talk about. And, Cueto more or less says, hey, look, I'm just taking back what's always been mine. This is my temple. I've got no beef with you. I just had to take care of business. Catrina retorts that this isn't over, that she will reclaim the temple, that Matanza she still believes Matanza is no match for Mil Muertes. And she pretty much alludes to the fact one day that Matanza is going to meet death, and when he does, Mil Muertes will reclaim what is his, and this temple will be hers again. So Catrina letting Cueto know, putting his ass on notice that they are not done yet. So really great scene here.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was so good. And I love, too, that Catrina, her teleportation skills work on larger scales where she can teleport from one room to another, but they also work on smaller scales because she teleported from just chilling out in the chair across from Cueto to right up in his face getting ready to choke him out again.
Yeah, she's a very imposing creature, to say the least.
Yeah.
And you gotta wonder, here's my question to you, because we kind of discussed it a little bit in the live reactions, but this is the space for more formal discussions. Are we looking at our Ultima Lucha 2 main event, Mil Muertes versus Matanza? Do you think they're building for that, or do you think it's a slower burn than that?
I don't know, dude. I think we might even see it sooner than that.
We might. Hell, considering that we already got Matanza versus Pentagon Jr. night, and with any other promotion with their kind of infrastructure, the standard wrestling infrastructures, pay-per-views and live events and all this, it would have been at a marquee pay-per-view event. Yeah. Lucha Underground's like, no, every week is a freaking pay-per-view, bitch.
Well,
take
pretty
notice.
Much, yeah. The fact that we got Pentagon versus Matanza already tonight tells you that they aren't really concerning themselves with, really holding off on these big matches.
And that's really amazing to me because they can... And that's something, too, that I noticed with Lucha Underground in Season 1. They can give you big matches, but it doesn't compromise the build for what they perceive to be the biggest matches for Ultima Lucha.
Yeah.
And, they did that so effortlessly and so successfully, I might add, because when you have a match on regular TV like all night long between Johnny Mundo and Prince Puma, and yet for Ultima Lucha you still build to a cataclysmic main event like Prince Puma versus Mil Muertes, which was really kind of like a volleyball effort because it seemed like everybody was going to the main event at Ultima Lucha at one point, and then the dust finally settled, and yet how epic that was. I believe that was your match of the year for our TWitWoW Awards last year.
Puma Muertes was, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And, that just goes to show they gave you all of these quality television matches, and not once did it compromise the integrity or the prestige of their biggest show, Ultima Lucha. I'm thinking the same thing here for Ultima Lucha 2. So if they give us Muertes versus Matanza early, on an episode of Lucha Underground, if anything, that makes me shake in my boots even more now, because what are you planning for Ultima Lucha then for these guys? Just unbelievable to think about. So yeah, I don't know when a collision course between these two is going to take place, but it is just going to be earth-shattering when it finally does, because you're talking two behemoths going head-to-head, presumably at the moment for the Lucha Underground Championship.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know, man. I feel like the big match that they might build to now is Pentagon versus Matanza with Vampiro at ringside.
That is true. I would almost call it Pentagon 2.0, but I'll get to my reasoning why later when we get to the appropriate segment.
Yeah, we'll talk about it then. But to me, that's almost like a bigger money match, just as far as what we're anticipating for the future, than just doing Matanza versus Mil, because Matanza and Mil, I feel like that needs to happen, but I don't think that it's really going to be as much of a build because they're both Rudos,
Yeah, and not only that, when you look at the main event of the first Ultima Lucha, being Puma versus Muertes, Puma was the Técnico of the temple.
Exactly.
Everybody loved him, and conversely, I would say that Muertes was the Rudo of the temple that season.
I think there were a few guys that could lay claim to that title. Him, Hernandez, Mundo, but I agree that as far as that scope, he was the most credible of the group.
Absolutely. And now you look at the playing field now, and Pentagon is just over as a motherfucker. These people, I'm telling you, if he, you know what, I shouldn't say, when he wins the championship, because I'm confident he will be a Lucha Underground champion one day, but you just never know when. If he ever wins the Lucha Underground title, which, again, I'm quite confident about, I think the roof would blow off the place. That is going to be such a huge title win for the people, why not do it at an Ultimate Lucha 2 if that is your endgame? And I would never even try and predict what Lucha Underground has planned for their endgame. But yeah, I agree with you. Just from fan reaction, Matanza was already loathed by people in Aztec Warfare because he was so contrary to the Lucha Libre style, and he was kind of squashing the Lucha Libre attempts of everybody else, so he was kind of snuffing that out. And then you've got Pentagon, who's so beloved for the violence he brings. A match like that freaking sells, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I agree with you. That's just as much, if not more of a money matchup than just, kind of an irresistible force meets an immovable object kind of deal with two behemoths like Muertes versus Matanza.
And I think that's what Lucha Underground's going to go for.
I have to agree with you. I'm definitely inclined to agree.
Unlike WWE, I feel like Lucha Underground always goes for the story over the spectacle.
And I agree. Definitely more narrative driven and more substantive in that regard than just, what's the greatest spectacle we can put on?
Yeah.
So, completely agree.
All right. Up next was the second match of the night, actually. Catrina bringing out the Disciples of Death. We've got an elimination match for the trios titles, Disciples of Death versus the Unlikely Trio, Angelico, Ivelisse, and Son of Havoc. And this was, I will admit this match started out a little bit slow, but I definitely think that it picked up, especially when Angelico started to get some heavy offense in the middle of the ring.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you, but I will say this. I think the pacing was very smart given that this was an elimination match.
Yeah, because it's like once Ivelisse got eliminated, Angelico and Son of Havoc got put into panic mode, and they had to crank their volume up.
And that's exactly the point that I was going for, Ashton. Once you lose a member, desperation starts to increase, and therefore you have a greater sense of urgency, therefore the match picks up. So I think from a psychological standpoint and how you pace the matchup, this match was on point. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that this is probably my favorite match between these two teams. I thought this was really well done.
I would agree with that, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and dude, can I just say, and here's the thing, I think anybody can guess, like, if I was to do a Lucha Underground Fave 5, I make no bones about the fact that Son of Havoc would be on it. Like, I love the guy and I love what he does. But Angelico, to me, stole the show here.
We know that Johnny Mundo would be number 1. I'm assuming Taya would be number 2. Who would be number 3? Pentagon?
Pentagon, yeah.
And then, would Son of Havoc be 4 or 5?
I think he'd be 4, 5... Honestly, I think Matanza would be 5 right now because he immediately just broke onto my list. And in fact, just to correct you slightly, I think I'd put Pentagon at 2 above Taya, only because I'm not as familiar with Taya as I am with Pentagon.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I plan to remedy that someday soon. But getting back on track, why I say that, Ashton, Angelico stole the show in this match to me. He killed it tonight. And I know you freaking love Angelico, but his athleticism got put on full display in this match, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. He is freaky. Like, that, there's no other way to put it. He's amazing.
I mean, just like, he's so Nakamura-esque to me in the sense, like, how he uses his limbs is unbelievable.
It's just crazy, dude, that, like, you have one guy in Japan and one guy who was born in South Africa, but now he's in Mexico, so really, like, opposite ends of the earth with, and I don't even want to say similar styles, because Angelico is much more sort of smooth. I mean, obviously Lucha Libre style, whereas obviously Nakamura is strong style, and he doesn't give a shit about being smooth. He just wanted to hurt, punch you in the face and cause pain. But the fact that they both have so much in common as far as like the long limbs, the knee strikes, they're both such underrated athletes. Like, it's just, I love both of them so much, and Angelico to me is super underrated because I feel like the only reason anybody ever really gives him credit in like the mainstream is because it would be because of the dives that he's done, and I think he's so much more than that.
Oh, I agree with you. I feel like, here's the thing. I think it was smart of him to do those dives because it's like, okay, this is my moment for everybody to take notice of me, but I hope those same people that took notice of him then appreciate the more substantive things that he brings to the table down the road, because I think this guy has so much to give. I mean, it's funny that the entirety of Team Havoc, I see future world champions or future Gift of the Gods champions. Like, I do see them in that main event tier. And Angelico is no different from Ivelisse or Son of Havoc in that regard. I mean, he can do anything to me, and he's got a charisma about him that I think will take him even further. And I'll tell you, man, he just killed it here. I loved how he lit everybody up with knee strikes and his finisher, the falling of the angel, which I think we got to see it at least, once in this match, because I know he tried to do it to Sinestro, but Sinestro slid out.
Yeah.
And, then just to go by eliminations, guys, I know that Barrio Negro, Ivelisse got eliminated first, and then I believe Barrio Negro got eliminated next by Angelico, and then I believe Trace got eliminated next, or no, Angelico got eliminated next by Sinestro, and then Son of Havoc, I believe he eliminated Trace, and then it came down to him and Sinestro, and then Son of Havoc eliminated him with a shooting star, which was preceded by, because Catrina tripped Son of Havoc up, he hit his head, the back of his head, it seemed like he was going to be out and Sinestro was going to pick the bones. Then Ivelisse came out, and she kicked Catrina in the head.
Knocked her the hell out.
Yeah, knocked her out, which, by the way, I'm still putting on the table that Catrina Ivelisse is going to be a match at Ultima Lucha. I just had this sneaking feeling, but maybe it will be on an episode of Lucha Underground. But these two women are going to do something, because Ivelisse has said, I'm going to get my hands on you, and she got a small taste tonight, but I'm thinking she's going to want more. Because here's the thing, too. Now that Team Havoc has retained, how mad Catrina got at Pentagon for just putting his hands on her and about to do major damage to her. Ivelisse actually full-on hit her, kicked her in the head. Yep. I don't think Catrina's going to let that go, so I'm thinking whoever wins that trios tournament, when they get their championship match, maybe Catrina will strike again, because I just don't see her and Ivelisse being done with each other anytime soon. But Team Havoc does retain. Again, a really fun matchup. I think the best these two trios teams have had together. And I'm really looking forward now to Team Havoc having new contenders. I'm actually glad. Nothing against the Disciples of Death, because I know Caltech Star is a huge fan of those guys. But I'm really looking forward now to Team Havoc having a new kind of arch nemesis kind of team for those trios championships.
I think it's actually Wrestling Fan that's the big fan of them.
It is wrestling. Oh, you know what? I think you're right. It is Wrestling Fan. So, yeah, but regardless, I like the guys. I don't know if they're going to be around much longer after failing to recapture the championships. But now Team Havoc has new contenders to look forward to, and I'm very intrigued at who that might be.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on. Up next, we had another backstage segment in Cueto's office. This was really curious to me. Rey Mysterio Jr. talking to Cueto, explaining that he is there because of El Dragon Azteca, and Cueto's just like, oh yeah, he was really impressive. I saw him last week. And Rey was just like, no, that was El Dragon Azteca Jr. I'm here about the original El Dragon Azteca, my mentor, the man that trained me, the man who died, the man who, this is how he worded it, the man who came into this temple and never left. I love that.
That was so good. I'm telling you, he's only, we've seen him in the cinematics, so I shouldn't say only 2 weeks, but now he's really been involved in the temple. This is his second week now, and he's just been doing quality work this season as Rey in Lucha Underground.
Definitely.
Yeah, I actually feel like I can invest in him again, and I can appreciate him again with the stuff that he's been doing in the temple. And Cueto, again, in typical Cueto fashion, denies any involvement, says, I don't know anything about that, I didn't have anything to do with that, but I love that you're in my temple, I know you're one of the best luchadors in the world, so he pours 2 drinks, and he says, hey, I want you and El Dragon Azteca Jr. to keep competing in my temple. And he offers Rey a drink, and Rey takes it. And my view of the situation, and I even kind of said this in live reactions, it's quite similar to, I know there was a big uproar way back when Daniel Bryan first joined the Wyatt family, and I was one of the few people to say he's playing the long con. I think that's what Rey's doing here. He's making Cueto think we'll have an amicable business relationship, but what better way to investigate than when you're deep inside the heart of the beast? So I think he's just going to play nice, but he's going to continue his investigation as to what happened to the real El Dragon Azteca, or I should say his mentor El Dragon Azteca, with El Dragon Azteca Jr., and yeah, once that all gets exposed, then Rey is going to strike. That's my feeling.
You might be right, man.
I mean, look, Rey Mysterio to me is kind of like in that Ricky Steamboat kind of boat where I just don't ever really see him being a heel or have nefarious motives. I mean, he can say that he's burying the hatchet with Cueto here, but this guy's a lifelong Technico. Everybody loves him. He's beloved in Mexico especially. I mean, Cueto said it best. He's a legendary luchador there. So for him
I think he even called him the most famous luchador in the world.
Exactly. So for him to just be like, no, Cueto, we're good, and so is the scotch, let me tell you. It would just compromise everything we know about Rey Mysterio. So I don't think they're going that route. I just think he's just kind of placating Cueto and just waiting for his time to strike.
Yep, I completely agree with you, man. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
But the question I have for Rey is the same question I've had for Officer Reyes for a while now.
Yeah.
Can he avoid getting too close? And if he does get too close, can he survive? Because this temple, man, your life's at risk every week you walk into it.
Exactly. And yeah, that really is a great question too, because I don't know, with Rey, man, he's I don't know if I would say that he is in as much danger as Officer Reyes, because I mean, if it would come out that Rey really, truly isn't a big fan of Dario Cueto, I don't think anyone would really be surprised. But if it came out that Officer Reyes was Officer Reyes and not Cortez Castro, I think he would die on day one.
Yeah, and plus, and I only say this because I figure Lucha Underground's given this the same thought I have. In fact, that's actually insulting to Lucha Underground. They've given it 10 times more thought than I have. You have to think about it logically, too. If Rey Mysterio was suddenly to up and disappear, like say that Matanza dismembered him, you want to talk about Mexico coming after Chavo for Blue Demon Jr.
Yeah.
Mexico would be ready to burn that temple to the ground.
That's true.
So I don't think Cueto, even if it did come to light that Rey's been snooping around, he would try and dispose of Rey. I'm not saying with non-violent means, because Cueto only deals in violence, but he wouldn't full-on kill Rey, because he doesn't need Mexico on his back. And
I mean, that's the thing, too. Like, El Dragon Azteca was Rey's mentor. I wouldn't even say that he's ever been as famous as Rey, and Rey still found out about him. So word travels fast when it comes to when certain icons get hurt or killed or held captive or whatever.
Exactly, and Cueto knows that. So even if he is like, son of a bitch, Rey's been trying to expose me or he's digging too close, he'd find a way to dispose of him that doesn't get Mexico breathing down his neck. Whereas Officer Reyes, and I mean this with all due respect to Cortez Castro, he doesn't have the same profile as Rey does. If he goes under, maybe his police department would know about it, but that's it. And I feel like Cueto would actually be more confident, more comfortable dealing with the police department than the entirety of a country. So, yeah, I definitely think Officer Reyes, is in deeper shit here. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on. We have our third match of the night. There were actually 4 matches on this show, which is rare for Lucha Underground. Almost every show has 3. Or 1, because Aztec Warfare and All Night Long were things. The Mac accompanying Sexy Star to the ring. Sexy Star has a big match tonight against, though, this is the thing, Mariposa.
Yes! Finally seeing her debut. And I freaking loved it, man. I mean, you had a line in live reactions that I just think becomes truer and truer every time I play it back in my own head. And that's that Mariposa is like the female Matanza. And if the debut was any indication, I'd say that Lucha Underground agrees with you, because she dominated here. And this is against Sexy Star. Like, this woman is not a slouch. I mean, last season, the height of her success was being a part of the Gift of the Gods and having an Aztec medallion, and she's even beaten the likes of, Pentagon Jr. and had her run in with the crew and stuff like that. Like, this is a woman that's fought with the best of them and held her own. Mariposa disposed of her like she was nothing.
Yep.
Unbelievable debut here. I mean, really, the only thing that Sexy had going for her was her quickness, but that was more to be evasive of Mariposa than to take it to the offensive.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you, the way Mariposa punctuated this match, I know I got a pop from you, brother. A vertebreaker from Mariposa.
Well, I was hoping she would use it, because that's always been Cheerleader Melissa's finisher on the Indies and in Shine and wherever else she's been. And just the idea that we have somebody using a vertebreaker as a finish in Lucha Underground gets me all excited.
Yeah, I completely agree. After the match, I mean, this is a borderline squash match, guys.
It really was. You said that like 3 times in live reactions, and it doesn't stop being true.
Exactly. And, the Mag goes to check on Sexy, but then Marty puts the boots to him, and then Mariposa goes off the ropes, and they do a wheelbarrow splash. I like that they do a couple of rotations, though, to make it seem like she's flying like a moth, and then the splash to Mac.
Or like a butterfly, because Mariposa is actually Spanish for butterfly.
That is true. That's an excellent point. I stand corrected. So they lay waste to both of them. And honestly, Ashton, if these two are going to be a part of the trios tournament, I do hope that their partner, whoever they find, I would almost really love it to be somebody that's new, and then maybe they claim, like Marty, that they have Aztec blood and they come from the Moth tribe, because I want them to keep that purity going on. You know, you got the Moth, you got the butterfly. I wonder what else you could come up with, but I want that to kind of continue. You know, I don't want a big deviation from what they've got going on, so we'll see. And honestly, it does seem like they have plans for Sexy Star. I mean, you know, it's a lot of psychological torture. We know psychological torture, one of the primary functions of it is to, you know, kind of condition people. Maybe they'll try and get Sexy Star to be on their team, even if she's unwilling at first. That could be an interesting twist of events, so we'll see.
That would be different. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you would think that even if she would be like, okay, fine, whatever, just please don't hurt me, Mac would come in and be like, listen, no, this isn't happening. She's going to be on my team. We have a third partner or whatever.
Well, considering how quickly Marty and Mariposa disposed of Mac, if he was to try any protest, I mean, he'd be having flashbacks to when Cage just slammed him from one locker against the next all over again. So maybe Mac should sit this one out, is what I'm kind of thinking. But we'll see what happens. I actually really wouldn't be surprised the more I think about it if in some maybe, and you know what, dude? Maybe they don't even have to reach that far. Look, you know, right, that Cueto's a scumbag. And he loves doing things. Maybe he'll just put Sexy Star with Mariposa and Marty the Moth, because he doesn't even like Sexy to begin with. In Season 1, she was a part of the troupe that Cueto felt like didn't even belong in his temple to begin with. Yeah. So he could just be like, well, Sexy, you know, you really came to earn my respect before I left the temple, and when I came back, I heard you were still doing great things. So I'm going to reward you for that effort. I'm going to put you in the Trios tournament. Only problem is you're going to be teaming with Mariposa and Marty the Moth. And then, you know, he has a little drink as he has a slice murder himself. I could totally see that. Yeah, I think Cueto is going to pair Sexy Star with Marty and Mariposa. In fact, I'm betting on it right now. That's my official prediction.
You know, I appreciate you thinking outside the box, but I don't think that I'm going to sign on to that prediction.
That's fine. You have every reason, you know, not to. I mean, Lucha Underground's unpredictable. Who knows what they've got planned? But yeah, even if it's not necessarily Marty and Mariposa's psychological conditioning being successful, because I still think it would be too soon, Cueto is a backdoor that they can readily use, and I would instantly believe it. I wouldn't question it at all. So that's something to think about.
Yeah. Oh, man. I honestly, I even kind of hope they don't go that route, because, God, that would be brutal. That would be so mean.
Dude, I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, and I kind of figured they would do this someday with Sexy Star. When you look at her backstory is tragic and brutal. So why not test that metal in storylines that kind of mirror that brutality and that tragedy, and to have to be paired with the people that kept you in captivity and psychologically tortured you. I mean, that's sick, even for Cueto, but that's exactly why I'd expect it. I mean, who's going to tell him no, especially when he's got Matanza backing him up? So, yeah, that is my official prediction, dude. I think that's going to be one of the trios teams in this tournament.
You know what? That almost makes me think, what if they go the next route and they have Sexy refuse, and then Cueto says, okay, well, you can either be on that team or you can face my brother.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Here's the carrot. Now here's the stick. You know, because
what do you think Sexy would pick in that situation?
I think she'd pick teaming with those two. Because
I think she'd pick the match, because then, she's competitive. Like, she would want to see if she could stand up to him.
That is true, and it probably would be for the world title, so you do want to go for the bigger prize. So, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, we'll see, man. I'm just glad we got this discussion going, because, yeah, I do think that is going to be a team in this tournament. I just really have a gut feeling now. The more we talk about it, the more convinced I become.
I hope everybody's prepared to watch Sexy Star die this season if that happens.
Yeah, really, because really, dude, to me, I don't really know how Sexy's going to come out of anything this season, okay, because you're right. I mean, Cueto could twist her arm. He could put her in the ring with Matanza. In that case, she's getting eviscerated. Or she could stick around and still try and face Mariposa and Marty in their psychological torment, and that doesn't seem to be faring well for her either. And really, it's so funny, dude, and I have to give Lucha Underground credit for this, because if you remember, one of my nitpicks of Season 1 was that I felt like she won too much. She has been totally off her game this season, and she actually has legitimate obstacles. Yep. I mean, they are not John Cena-ing this shit. You know, they are really saying, You have to swim up this current, and it is not being kind to you at all. I love that Sexy Star's done a 180 this season, while in my mind not losing any credibility at all. Oh my god, Lucha Underground, you're amazing.
Yeah, that's what psychological torment will do to you.
Exactly. All right, I think we've been on this topic long enough. Let's move on.
All right, up next was the very interesting scene that I referenced earlier that I really wanted us to talk about. Cueto shows up where he's keeping Matanza in his cage still, tells him about the match with Pentagon, and says, Pentagon likes to break people's arms, I want you to break his back, and then unlocks the door and lets him out.
Yeah, I mean, Cueto, last season he really relied on guys like the Crew and Big Rig, because I think he was tentative about unleashing Matanza, but I almost feel like for Cueto, Aztec Warfare was kind of like a proof of concept. Like, can I keep him under control, and can he really dominate? Answers to both questions right now, anyway, is yes. So now he has no fear about unleashing Matanza. Last season, he seemed so timid about it, and so tentative, always keeping that key close to his chest. Yep. Now, at the slightest provocation, he will sick Matanza on people. Again, another 180, and it's just very interesting to see.
I agree with you that it was like almost like a litmus test, like, can this work? And now it's like, oh, well, it can work. So, yeah, I'm using it every chance I can. And who can blame him?
Exactly. Well, really, in that regard, he's no different than Catrina. Because if Catrina really had a problem, what's the answer? Mil Muertes, and justifiably so. With Cueto, somebody messes with me, Pentagon wants to embarrass me in front of my believers, what's the answer? Matanza. And it just freaking works. And you know what? The idea that Cueto keeps Matanza behind that cage. See, here's my thing, though, and this is where it gets interesting. And you did say you wanted to talk about this segment, so let's talk about it. I think it's actually kind of funny, and I almost feel like, I don't know if Matanza is more intelligent than we're giving him credit for, but I almost have to feel like maybe he's just kind of playing along with it. Because, dude, think about it. In Aztec Warfare, he dominated. Everybody knows this. But the one thing that stuck out to me, he broke Joey Ryan away from where he was handcuffed. You're going to tell me that nobody could buy Matanza bending the bars of his own cage to escape? Like, that's
true. That is true. Yeah, dude. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's not even a connection that I made. Maybe, I mean, I am beginning to think that Matanza legitimately does have compassion, if not exclusively for Dario.
Right. That could be. Maybe it's not entirely a malevolent god that inhabits the vessel of what was once, Dario Cueto's younger brother.
Yeah.
But my thing is, because I still, and maybe this is just my stubbornness, Ricardo Rodriguez going back to Alberto Del Rio with RVD there kind of thing. But I still have to believe that Cueto cannot control Matanza forever. Just every story of a great and powerful monster always seems to end that way. You want to look at Frankenstein and his creation, or if you appreciate a DBZ reference, Babidi and Majin Buu. I just feel like it's in that same vein. There is going to come a time where he's just like, Cueto, I realized I've really been taking your orders, but I have the power to carry them out. Yes, and? So that means I also have the power to take you out. Oh. Well, what if I offered you a unique opportunity? And then he doesn't even finish because his face gets torn off. I just have to see that coming. So, yeah, I find it interesting that Cueto can keep Matanza caged. The only plausible explanation is we know he did have to feed competitors to Matanza before they returned to the temple so that he could take out everybody. Maybe now he's kind of famished. Maybe he gets weaker when he doesn't feed on anybody for a while, and that's why he's able to be restrained in that cage, which is why he got offered bail when he ate his face, just to kind of keep him going. He needs to eat like everybody else, it seems. So maybe that's a work around it.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I'm just trying to piece together what exactly Matanza is. So I'm sorry for droning on, but I'm just.
I think we already know what he is.
Well, I mean, we know what he is, but just how he operates, I should say. Because,
right. Just how sentient this being is.
Yeah, sentient, and the power, are there any contingencies on the power, any parameters we need to be aware of? So I'm just trying to piece all that together, because here's the thing. Lucha Underground set up a universe, and you and I know this. We've talked about it endlessly, as have many others, which is great to see, because that means more eyes are on the product. Lucha Underground has a universe where anything really seems possible. You could tell me that there's a character coming that makes an entrance on this real live looking unicorn, and I wouldn't bat an eye. I'd be like, okay, that sounds interesting. And it's
whatever. How they pull that off.
Exactly. Curious to see how they pull that off, but notice I'm not like, they won't pull that off. No, I'm curious how they'll put that off. That's the confidence I have. A thing that doesn't even exist, Lucha Underground would will into existence. They're just that amazing. So they can really get away with anything. They have a lot of liberties. But even they like to ground those liberties somewhat into something. So where are Matanza's restrictions? Where does the mythos kind of start and stop in terms of everything? We already know the story and everything else. But now when we think about abilities and this and that, where is he constricted? And I do think that'll be something that eventually has to get answered because he's the champion. And as we know, a rule of thumb in wrestling, all champions eventually have to be beat. So for him to be beat, he has to have constrictions somewhere. And who's going to take advantage of them is the question. So yeah, that one scene, just seeing him in a cage again, really got my mind whizzing because just a week ago he laid waste to 9 people and became the heavyweight champion of the world on his debut. And now this week he's caged up again like a commoner. Just a total contrast in weeks for Matanza. But what exactly was on your mind? Because we know Cueto said, break Pentagon's back. I mean, so you think he was pretty much sent out on a hit, was Matanza to just take out Pentagon, not just beat him, right?
What I love about this, though, is the Batman comparison. Because to me, like I even said during live reactions, this confirms it. Pentagon is Batman, Matanza is Bane.
Exactly. And I think it's a perfect fit, too, because Batman isn't necessarily an anti-hero, but he is more brooding than most heroes you would kind of think of.
I would call the Batman that was portrayed in Batman v Superman as an anti-hero, considering he actually killed people.
That is true, and a lot of people took umbrage with that fact, but if you want to take the most relevant Batman, and that would be Ben Affleck's portrayal in, again, Batman v Superman, which I haven't seen yet.
I've actually, speaking of that portrayal, I think I've actually heard a lot of people saying that might be the best Batman ever.
I've heard a lot of that as well. For all the critiques that the film has gotten, that's the one standout thing that I keep hearing is that
consistently,
Ben Affleck ran away.
That Ben Affleck, not only the best Batman, but the best Bruce Wayne as well.
Yeah, I've been hearing the exact same thing. I still have plans to see the movie, so please no spoilers in the comments if you get excited by a Batman v Superman reference.
Yeah.
So, I do agree, but we're looking at the most relevant Batman. The comparison fits, and I mean, Matanza, my God. I mean, if you guys remember Christopher Nolan's films, his Bane portrayal, that's perfect. Even the mask a little bit is just slightly Bane-esque.
There's a little similarity, I love that, though, because, like, I was telling you, like, if we get some kind of, like, a high-impact backbreaker, it's official. Pentagon's going to be gone for a few months. And, I mean, not full-on, but they delivered,
Absolutely. Dude, unbelievable.
It wasn't technically a backbreaker, meaning a move in wrestling called a backbreaker, but he still broke the shit out of Pentagon's back.
Yeah, he took care of it.
And, I mean, we can actually use this now to transition into the main event match, Pentagon versus Matanza. And I don't want to call it a squash match, but it kind of was.
It more or less was, dude. I mean, I'll say the same thing about this match that I said about Mariposa Sexy. It was more or less a squash match. Maybe a little bit of offense on the other side, but you know what the crazy thing is?
I think this was less a squash match than Mariposa Sexy Star.
I would agree. I would definitely agree because I feel like Pentagon put up more resistance, but here's the crazy thing, dude. They used Pentagon's resistance to keep the steam of Matanza going. Like people, and again, I've said this probably the third time I've said this now in this review. We've watched reviews, you and I. We've gone back. We've watched reviews. We've read reviews. All different types of forms of reviews. We've consumed them. The one common thread: Matanza's incredible. What a debut! Best debut I've seen in a while, if not ever. And in my case, it was ever. I even told the guy who plays Matanza so myself. And they kept the steam up this week because what do they do with Pentagon's offense? Not necessarily make Pentagon look good, though he is formidable and nobody would deny that. They just show you what a monstrosity Matanza is. Because the most telling thing to me, I mean, there was a lot of great stuff. He got a step up Enziguri early on, did Pentagon. Matanza didn't even register it.
Yeah.
Pentagon got a super kick. Matanza shook it off almost like there was a gnat buzzing around him, and he just wanted to kind of clear his head, whatever.
Yeah, he flinched, but he didn't really stagger at all.
Exactly. The big one to me that I loved, the backstabber, the inverted lung blower, whatever you want to call it. Pentagon hits it. Matanza literally walks it off.
He didn't even fall. Like, Pentagon grabs him by the shoulders, pulls him down on top of Pentagon's own knees, And Matanza didn't even go to the mat. He stood straight up.
Yes. Dude. Unbelievable.
I have never seen somebody no-sell a backstabber, a lung blower, whatever you want to call it. I've never seen that before.
I mean, dude, here's the thing. You and I heaped a lot of praise on WWE, and I still would, because amazingly, in my mind anyway, they haven't totally compromised it, but we were heaping praise on them early on for how they were booking Braun Strowman. I feel like Lucha Underground is killing it with their portrayal of Matanza.
Yeah, I mean, Braun Strowman might not be easy to take off his feet, but he's way too easy to knock over the ropes.
Yeah. Whereas Matanza, I mean, good luck just mounting offense. We're taking him over the ropes as a possibility to begin with.
Yeah, like you try and take him over the ropes, and then he grabs you by the throat and kills you.
Exactly. Dude, dominance personified here in Matanza. And, it's funny because I notice with, like, a lot of wrestling fans, especially the more, like, aged ones and the more old school ones, they always say, it'd be great to have another monster character. And they always think, like, Kane 98. When they conceive of a monster, that's usually what they think of. They may have to step aside because Matanza is very quickly making waves here. I think he is a return to that kind of form. Just that kind of dominant booking, because not only did he no-sell everything that Pentagon was bringing, he dished it out as well, because he threw Pentagon into the seats. He, took him back in, hit the Wrath of the Gods. Actually, before that, he had a deadlift German. It was kind of like a German gut wrench kind of suplex. Then he hit Wrath of the Gods, and then it was over. So like Mariposa with Sexy Star, again, a very legitimate competitor, Matanza just disposes of Pentagon, a guy who was very credible in his own right, especially the latter half of Season 1, like he was nothing. The guy that has incurred violence on everybody else got easily disposed of by somebody. And not only that, you could say in a way, Pentagon got a taste of his own medicine. Not saying that he deserved it, because I'm pro Pentagon all the way. But he finally knew what it was like to go away on a stretcher, because then Matanza powerbombs him through a table. And another thing worth noting, people, because it's the little things with Lucha Underground, the table broke. Now, in any other promotion, that may not be a big deal, but Ashton, as you noted in live reactions, that table was used by people at least 5 or 6 times throughout the course of the season.
And last season. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's already been used at least once. I know Mill tried to put Phoenix through it this season and wasn't able to do it. So, like, the fact that Mill, I think that's actually the second or third time that Mill himself has tried to use it, and it never breaks, not even for Mil Muertes. But Matanza...
So I think that's a subtle way, at least in my mind, and I could be reading too much into it, though. How could anybody be blamed for reading too much into anything when it's Lucha Underground?
I completely see where you're going with this, and I'm behind it. 100%.
Yeah, is that he is stronger than Mil Muertes. Yeah, exactly. And just
the only other argument that you could make is that it's partially that and partially because Pentagon's so much heavier than Phoenix.
And that is true.
But even then, it proves that he's stronger than Mill because he got Pentagon up for a powerbomb in the first place.
Exactly. I mean, and dude, can we just pause for a second and admire the fact that Lucha Underground is so next level that even when their announced table breaks, it's significant. I feel like everywhere else it's been so...
They're building to everything. Like, everything that happens has been built to or is going to be used to build to something.
I mean, that dedication, though, is just unheard of. Like, it's an announce table. Any other promotion, you think it's just a byproduct of Carnage. Nothing really to bat an eye at. But when you know the history of this table, look at me talking about it, for Christ's sake, and about how many people used it but couldn't break it. And then this guy comes along, is like, hey, Pentagon, help me out here. Wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? No! And then power bombs him through it. It's a big deal. Because it makes Matanza look like a big deal. It's like him taking Excalibur out of the stone, for God's sakes. And then, when that's done, actually, that was all preceded by, after the match ended, Vampiro got out from where he was sitting, and he confronts Matanza. Matanza seems like he's going to back off, but then he boots Vampiro in the face. But I have to say, if the Cueto brothers made any mistake, it was letting Vampiro live. Because while Pentagon got loaded into that stretcher and into the ambulance, Vampiro took the ride with him. And he gave this look out the window of the door, and that look said, we're coming back, and we're going to finish what we started. So, and like I've been saying, I really believe that Vampiro is going to take Pentagon. I don't know what exactly it's going to take, but he is going to make Pentagon stronger. So I would almost call the Ultima Lucha 2 event, the main event, Pentagon 2.0 versus Matanza, because Pentagon, and I've been telling people this, on Twitter and elsewhere, Pentagon in his current state cannot beat Matanza, and he showed that tonight. So he has got to power up. How he does it, I don't know. But Matanza better watch himself. He may have wanted to do more damage to Vampiro than he did, because now that Vampiro's able to walk away and take on his student, that could spell bad news for the Cuetos.
Yeah, dude, man, that look that Vampiro gave from the inside of the back of the ambulance, that's Asuka smiling levels of uneasy.
Yes, I couldn't have said it better, my friend. And I'll tell you, Dario Cueto better register it as such, because he controls the key, and for the moment he controls Matanza, and he's trying to control everything around him just like he did in Season 1. Can't juggle those balls forever. Sooner or later, those arms are going to tire, and when you miss one, you're going to miss another one, and until they're all scattered around your feet and you're left with nothing. So Dario better keep up the pace, man, because I think the world's about to catch up to him in a major way.
Yeah, man. I think you might be right. As scary as it is to think about, I don't ever want Dario Cueto to full-on leave the temple again, even if it's only temporary, because even then it was, seeing him for 3 of the first 9 episodes was nowhere near enough, in my opinion. But he definitely has a comeuppance on the way.
Yeah, he does, and
And it might not even be this season. That's the thing. It might not be this season. It might be next season. It might not be next season. But it's coming. Whether it comes from Pentagon or Mill or Cage or someone else, it's not just going to come in the form of that physical comeuppance. There's also going to be comeuppance in the form of Agent Reyes.
I mean, well, yes. And if you want my honest opinion, because I expect Lucha Underground to be around for a long, long time, it'll be a lot of seasons for Dario Cueto to just accrue moments of being an absolute scumbag, that if you want my opinion, I feel like Lucha Underground has the type of environment and the type of mythology where his comeuppance would be absolutely divine. I think a god would literally strike Cueto down, and that'll be his comeuppance. And that's really what I'm starting to believe, because Cueto does find a way within his temple to survive anything that comes his way. And that's why I do worry for Officer Reyes, because if he honestly believes that, especially with Matanza by his side, that he's going to be able to book Dario Cueto and just take him, to be processed and then jailed, he's got another thing coming, man. So I think if Cueto's going to eat anything, it's going to have to come from the gods above that watch over the temple. And Cueto better watch himself, man, because that's some powerful shit to be messing with.
Definitely, man. I don't know. What do you, I don't know, man. It's crazy. The whole idea that Cueto has been getting away with all this stuff and they're just waiting for the right time to book him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
That's another question. I wonder how many more people are going to end up dead thanks to Matanza.
Oh my god,
if he is capable of breaking Pentagon's back with, I forget, Wrath of the Gods, that's what it is, with the Wrath of the Gods, formerly known as the Tour of the Islands, that finisher, and then a powerbomb through the announce table, what's going to happen when he actually tries to hurt someone?
Exactly. I'll tell you what's going to happen. He's going to succeed with ease. And that's the terrifying thing about Matanza most of all. But I've got nothing more to say about this, do you?
Let's move on.
High spots and low shots. My low shot I think is going to be very straightforward this week. Yeah. My low shot's going to be Pentagon.
Yeah.
Had a shot at the world title, didn't have to worry about any Puma or Muertes or Catrina. It was him and his efforts, one-on-one against Matanza. And not only was he unsuccessful, I dare say he was unsuccessful to an embarrassing degree only because Matanza's just so dominant. And not only that, not only did he not walk away with the World Championship, he didn't walk away, period. He got stretchered out of the temple. So we know Pentagon's going to be back, but until that day, he's going to have to accept tonight being my low shot. Who's your low shot?
Man, my low shot's Sexy Star, because we talked about how, Pentagon Matanza was a bit of a squash match, but we both agreed that it wasn't as much of a squash match as Sexy Star versus Mariposa.
Yeah, you know what? I agree. So Sexy Star had a really rough night. Her psychological torment continues, and she just can't seem to get the upper hand on those doing it to her. I'm going to have a bit of fun with my high spot. My high spot's Dario Cueto, because it's his first week back in power, and he's already set up a... Yeah.
He's asserted his dominance, or reasserted it at least.
Exactly. He's reasserted his dominance. He's established a new trios tournament beginning next week. He has seemingly, at least in his mind, and that's the perspective I'm going with, buried the hatchet with Rey Mysterio, and he's kept both Rey Mysterio and Dragon Azteca Jr., in his temple. So from his eyes, talent acquisitions, that was another part of his night. And then even though he got manhandled to start, he was able to, keep control of Matanza and use Matanza as the weapon that he is. And he made sure that the same guy that put his hands on him in Pentagon got taken out on a stretcher, which sends a message to the rest of the temple, nobody be a hero. So I'd say Dario Cueto had the best night of anybody.
John, before I go through with talking about my high spot, I just want to kind of address, you are really, anytime you talk about Cueto and Matanza's relationship, it feels like you see it as a ticking time bomb, and Matanza is just going to snap and destroy Cueto one of these days.
I do. I just, again, if you look throughout history, and I'm not saying the Lucha Underground replicates history. If anything, they deviate from it.
Right.
But you can never keep a monster like that under control. And I just feel like even if he doesn't destroy Cueto, destroying Cueto and becoming sovereign from him are two different things. So even if the former doesn't realize itself, I fully expect the latter to. But one of these days, Matanza's going to be his own man, and God help the rest of us. Because Jesus Christ, with no rational mind in that ear anymore, who knows how quickly the bodies will pile up. So, I'll tell you, man, dark times ahead.
So then, if that does happen, do you think Cueto would decide to team up with maybe some of his adversaries, maybe Vampiro, maybe Catrina, get some heads together, try and get a few guys to take down Matanza?
Ashton, if I've learned anything, it's that people can be bound together over a will to live. So absolutely I could see it. Because if they realize that this one thing, this God, because we have to, and honestly, Ashton, the only reason I keep saying it isn't to be repetitive, it's just to keep in perspective that Matanza is a God. Because often I forget, to be honest. So I have to keep reminding myself. So what's the way to deal with a God? Well, in Cueto's mind, I got to band everybody together, and we have got to try and battle this back. So for that common cause, for the fate of the temple itself, which would probably get to be on that scale if Matanza ever did become sovereign from Cueto, abso-freaking-lutely. Oh my God, yes. So with that in mind, who is your high spot?
Well, I like your style. I like the idea of kind of picking the beneficiary of the monster. So my high spot is going to be Marty the Moth Martinez.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, because, I think that he kind of proved last year that he's still an inexperienced fighter. He still needs to, maybe he needs to go through that El Dragon Azteca training program with Rey. Because he's still got a little bit of work to do, a little wet behind the ears. But man, with Mariposa by his side, I don't care how green of a fighter he is, he has nothing to worry about. She's going to take care of him. And that's the thing, too, is he's not trying to, assert dominance over her like Cueto is with Matanza. They're brother and sister. They have, that sibling love. There's no reason for them to ever have any kind of internal beef, and if they do, it's just, well, yeah, we're brother and sister. We fight all the time, of course. But they always come back.
And you know what, to build on your point, because that's an excellent point, what I like, because I know we kind of speculated this as a possibility, and it's still time for it to manifest, it's not a relationship of malevolence. Like you said, Marty doesn't impose his dominance on Mariposa.
Yeah.
Well, the converse is also true. Like you said, it is a sibling relationship, so there's that love and there's that reciprocity.
They're psychotic together.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think it works. I'm actually glad. Again, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't complain if they started turning up a few notches and you see Mariposa really maltreating Marty and stuff like that. But I think
we even predicted that, didn't we, in our Luchador Spotlight?
Yeah, and I think you specifically did. You said you could conceive that of happening because Marty just hasn't won any of his matches, and Mariposa is going to be the better fighter. And let's keep in mind, Marty has one win over the Mac, but that's only because Mariposa came out. And then Mariposa against Sexy Star tonight didn't need any help.
No.
Marty did get involved a little bit putting Sexy Star back in the ring, but that was only putting her back in the ring. which honestly I feel like Mariposa could have taken care of that herself with the psychological edge she has over Sexy anyway.
Well, and even if he wouldn't have, you have to wonder if Mariposa would have won via countout because Sexy Star just wouldn't have gotten back in the ring with her.
Exactly. I think it was more, nope, you're gonna face it, you're gonna deal with it, and we're not done playing with you yet kind of thing. And Mariposa took care of it. And really, not only does Marty have a great ally, not only does he have a great relationship, at least on the surface, with his sister, but his fashion sense is killer. So
that was actually, I was going to bring that up as another part of my high spot. We found out today that Marty grew up in the lap of luxury. So yeah, not only am I jealous of him having such an awesome sister, but I'm jealous of him having an amazing, rich, wealthy upbringing as well. That's amazing.
And I love the humility he exhibits about it, because he would just as soon wear a shirt that says Aztec Pride on it than the ascot that we saw him in that cinematic tonight. So, great stuff, man. Great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously that means that he's humble too, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly.
One of the world elite, wealthiest people on the planet walking around in a regular old yellow t-shirt. That's my kind of guy.
Yeah, certainly. I agree with you. Totally antithetical to Stokely Hathaway. So
yeah, hiding in plain sight.
All right, brother. Are there any more remarks you want to make before I take this baby home?
Let's go.
All right, guys. This has been Lucha Underground. This has been TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John. That's my cohort in commentary, Ashton. Guys, be sure to comment and subscribe on YouTube. Ashton, what question do you have for our subscribers this week?
Do you guys think Matanza is going to lose the title at all this season, or do you think it's going to take more than just season 2 to take the title off of him?
Very good question. I like that. So be sure to start the conversation down in the comments. Be sure to take that conversation over to Pwitoff. That is Pro Wrestling is taking over Facebook. There you will find a lot of Lucha Underground fans. They grow by the week. It is the premier wrestling program. Also be sure to like, share, and comment on the content on our TWitWoW Facebook page. Yes, we are on Facebook now, so be sure to interact with the page. If Facebook isn't your medium of choice, we also have a TWitWoW subreddit. There you will find all of our TWitWoW content, and members of that subreddit can create threads of their own on all things pro wrestling, including Lucha Underground, if you just want to keep up the conversation about the awesomeness that is Matanza. However, if you want the most intimate TWitWoW experience, if you want to interact with us on the ground level, you can follow both of us on Twitter. I am at John_TWitWoW, and per the request of my partner, that is JOHN, because I know there is some confusion there, JOHN_TWitWoW. Ashton is at APond404, that's the letter A, Pond, the body of water, POND 404, and we will see you again for our NXT review, where Samoa Joe takes on Bull Dempsey. And Samoa Joe's going to make sure that Bull does get Bull fit by testing his lung capacity to the absolute limit when he chokes him out before TakeOver Dallas, where he will get a rematch against Finn Balor. You can get all your best NXT coverage right here at TWitWoW with our NXT review after the show. Until then, tune in and peace out.